claims that. That's one of the things we'll speak about right now with Neama Rahmani, a former federal prosecutor and president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers. Neama, thanks so much for coming back on ITI. Great to talk to you.
Of course. Thanks for having me, as always.
Well, last time you and I spoke, we were about 7 jurors impaneled, and you were saying it's probably going to take weeks. Now we have a full jury's worth. I mean, 12 seated, but 2 also dismissed. Unusual in the first place. This trial is getting these jurors impaneled. The process has been. Just tell us about what we saw today, where we are, and talk also about those 2 jurors who were dismissed.
Well, we saw 2 jurors dismissed this morning, and we thought things were going to slow down, but then they picked up rather quickly. One juror was dismissed because he was less than truthful on his questionnaire and his answers to prosecutors. Apparently, he was arrested for ripping down some political material, and he hadn't disclosed that. Now, he said, of course, that it was just someone with the same name, but that was enough to get him removed from the panel. Then there was another juror who was seated, and she frankly was scared. She said that because of the media reports, folks were able to identify who she was, and she had concerns about serving on the panel. So the judge did allow her to step down as well.
Yeah, and on that point, the judge warned the press and asked the press not to report some details like employer details, because those media reports of employer details are allegedly what got back to this juror. Friends and family were able to identify this person, and they got spooked. Merchan said he has a legal authority to do it. That's the judge in the case. Just what's your sense of what the judge is saying, the request, and how proper it is?
You know, I disagree with Judge Merchan on this. I mean, we have open trials in this country, and this is the most politicized trial in American history. If you're not choosing to live stream it, reporters have to do their job and report on the proceedings. And if you're going to ask prospective jurors, where do you currently work? And what was your previous employer? Well, if those were small employers, folks are going to be able to figure out who you are based on just Google searches. So don't ask the question if you don't want media members to report on it. So this is on the judge, not on the media, in my opinion, Amrit.
And you feel this because you think that the public has a right to know what the press is hearing?
Absolutely. You know, what you should do is you should ask the prospective jurors, are you afraid? Do you not want to be here? Do you have a financial hardship? Is there any reason that you don't want to serve as a juror in this case? Dismiss those jurors. But the folks that are there that are answering questions, members of the public have a right to know. You have Trump saying that these are liberal jurors or stealth jurors who want to get on this panel. He's criticizing them. So media members are going to report on what is happening in that courtroom. And obviously we can't see it live. We're just seeing these still pictures and some of the courtroom drawings. But, you know, folks like you and I, we're not there. We have to rely on those media accounts. So I think reporters have an absolute and unfettered right to report on jury selection. And if the judge doesn't want them reporting, then don't ask the question.
Well, you know, when you and I were first talking, we were talking about how Judge Merchan may have thought that this was going to be very difficult to find jurors and wants to be protective of these jurors. I mean, this is such an extraordinary case. But as you say, for those who don't want to be serving in the first place, perhaps this is its own weeding out process. So, you know, those guardrails could potentially come down. We'll see how the judge moves through with that. Let's also talk about some of the other protective measures the judge has been talking about, and that is with these gag orders. I mean, the prosecution is saying Trump has violated numerous gag orders so far. You and I already spoke about the one about potentially disparaging a potential witness, Michael Cohen, former Trump attorney. Also, there's a conversation about this social media post that Trump made that amplified conversation from Fox News host Jesse Waters, who was saying some things that could be perceived to be attacking one of the jurors, and that would be violating a gag order. And the judge said, we're not going to look at this until later. I'll have another hearing about it. Talk about that delay. I mean, people say justice delayed, justice denied, right?
Well, Trump is upset. He had previously said that he wants unlimited peremptory strikes. And we know that obviously that's not the case. In New York, you get 10 for less serious felonies like this, 20 for Class A or B felonies, but this is not a serious one. And we're talking about juror number 11. And frankly, the defense ran out of strikes. This is the juror who said that she did not like Donald Trump's persona and that he was selfish. But this is part of the legal strategy. If you are a lawyer and you are trying the case, you need to make sure you have enough strikes or peremptories in your back pocket to remove someone that you don't like. They used too many, both sides used all 10, and that's why things started moving much faster today, Amrit, because really, unless Judge Merchan was going to kick someone for cause or because they were actually biased or there was an appearance of bias, they were going to be on this panel.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about voir dire as part of the adversarial process, and both attorneys, both sides are trying to get the most sympathetic jury that they can. Based on what you're seeing, based on what you're hearing, the challenges and the ones that have been struck, who do you think is winning this jury selection process so far?
I think the defense has done a good job, you know, and I say this respectfully. All the jurors, I'm sure, are amazing people, but most of them seem unremarkable except 3. That's juror number 3, the young corporate lawyer, his 5 years of experience, juror number 7, who's a civil litigator, and juror number 11, who we talked about. Those are the 3 that I can see being folks that want to lead this jury and folks that may take over the panel. Obviously, whenever you have lawyers on the panel, there's always a risk. And the conventional wisdom when I was a prosecutor is never put a lawyer on your panel unless you are absolutely sure that they are on your side. Because, look, this is not an easy case, at least with respect to the felony charges. We know that a lawyer might be very skeptical and say, really, was this false business record? Was it in furtherance of or to cover up an unlawful campaign finance violation? They may cut right through that, and the jurors may return misdemeanor convictions, which I think would be a loss for the prosecution. So those are the three jurors that I'm going to be watching very closely as this trial progresses.
Neama, we have less than a minute left, but I just want to ask, I mean, and I ask this with love, I mean, is that your bias as a prosecutor saying, I don't like lawyers? I mean, in other words, wouldn't defense attorneys also feel, I don't like a lawyer being on there because I lose that control and that framing in the jury room? Or do you feel like it's really a problem for prosecution and not defense in general to have lawyers on the jury?
Well, this is why, as a prosecutor, you got to win 12-0. Everyone's got to go along, right? I don't think Trump is going to get an acquittal under any circumstances here. So his best bet is jury nullification or a hung jury. So one or two problematic jurors, that's great for the defense in a case like this. One or two problematic jurors is a disaster for the prosecution.
Yeah, that's a great point. Neama Rahmani, thank you so much for bringing your experience as a former federal prosecutor to bear on all of this. I mean, it's fascinating to see it all play out. It's the adversarial process, and people are learning so much. And, you know, in the past, when some of these big cases have happened, we've seen spikes of people going to law school. Who knows what's going to happen now? Maybe these conversations will be part of that. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Of course, Amrit. I'm sure we'll see you real soon.
Yeah, there'll be a lot more to talk about. Thank you, Neama Rahmani. There's a growing debate